Hi, Jonathan York, Bay Financial Partners, looking at the investment markets. Another pretty reasonable boost for the US equity markets with the latest PCE, the Fed's sort of preferred inflation gauge. So that came in at 2.5, which is obviously pretty close to the Fed's sort of intended sort of target of 2% inflation. And that's on some back of some pretty encouraging GDP net data as well. That came in at 2.8 for the second quarter. So at present, you've got the US economy pushing along at a pretty good rate. You've got inflation coming down. You've still got growth at a reasonable level. But more importantly, you've got pressure being taken out of the labour market. And recent comments from Fed officials in terms of sort of rate cuts and, potentially looking that they don't have to see inflation down to their 2% target before they're looking to cut now. Now, we do have a Fed meeting this week, and it's just going to be very interesting. No one's expecting any rate cut this week, but it'll just be interesting to see what commentary accompanies the statement. Now, that's really seen term rates fall pretty dramatically in the US. 2 years down at 436, and the 10-year is now below 420 at 414. So it looks like a Fed rate cut now in September, and it'll just be interesting then to see if you get a further one in November or December. Now, Bank of Canada has cut for the second time as well. But also a pretty big week for earnings this week as well. We've got some of the big techs. We've got Apple, Amazon, Meta, and Microsoft. Now, on the election campaign, as we head into August now, we've got the DNC coming up in Chicago mid-August, and that's just expected to rubber stamp Kamala Harris as the Democratic candidate. And certainly in the polls, she's doing pretty well. Although she's yet to choose her VP running mate. Oil's backed off pretty dramatically as well. It's back through $75 now at $74.90 and change. Now in the UK, we've got a Bank of England meeting this week, expected to potentially cut interest rates. That will give the economy a bit of a boost, because certainly the new government now is sort of finding that potentially there looks to be a bit of a shortfall in the funding of around £22 billion. So it looks like it could be a first sort of tough 6 months for the new Labour government in the UK. Now in the EU, the French economy is obviously getting a pretty big boost from the Olympics. And potentially you're looking at a further rate cut from the ECB next time they meet in September. Now in Australia, the Australian economy is pushing along at a pretty good rate. You've got pretty good job growth coming through. Potentially the Reserve Bank could be looking at hiking rates after that latest CPI data came in at 4%. But I suspect they'll probably wait to see the next reading just to see if that was actually a further sort of trend upwards or whether it was just a bit of a blip. But also as well, with the other central banks around the world looking like they're going to cut, potentially the Reserve Bank of Australia doesn't want to increase rates. Now here in New Zealand, one of the major high street banks has cut its mortgage rate again. That's the second time now in about 3 weeks. And also with the commentary that accompanied the recent Reserve Bank meeting, where it looked like they had sort of pivoted on rates and now looking at cutting. Again, potentially if the US cuts in September, then the Reserve Bank probably cuts in maybe October or November. Although there is growing opinion that really the Reserve Bank needs to be cutting rates now because the economy certainly needs a bit of a boost. So will the Reserve Bank cut in August? Because certainly inflation is on the downward path. You also got migration figures falling, and certainly the heat is coming out of the labour market. So if you're looking for income options, go to the website www.bayfinancialpartners.co.nz for lots of interesting articles, and we'll look forward to speaking to you soon.